Sports Matters TV, bringing the sports home. Okay guys, welcome to Sports Matters TV. I'm in Cork. Obviously we cannot be in the office due to COVID-19. I'm joined by a true great when it comes to wrestling, a man that I've adored for many years, Mr. Eric Bischoff. Eric, how's things with you, sir?
Jerry, I'm not sure it's possible to be any better than I am right now. I almost feel guilty about it, but I don't.
You're obviously you're always active. Obviously, you're doing a lot of interviews, a lot of podcasts. You quite enjoy that kind of line of work, all that kind of media stuff.
I always have. As a kid growing up, I was fascinated by the ability to communicate via what is known here in the United States as citizens band radio, kind of a public access radio, and amateur ham radio and things like that. So, technology is something that I enjoy, and I enjoy the ability to reach out and communicate directly with fans all over the world. It's a fascinating opportunity, and grateful for the opportunity to be living in a culture and an environment and at a time where it's all possible.
And Eric, speaking of that fan base, obviously you've got a lot of Irish fans. Are we going to see you in Ireland in the near future? We spoke to you at WrestleCon in New York. We got a nice picture with you, had a great chat. Obviously, you'd love to meet the Irish fans at some stage in the near future.
I really would. I've been to Ireland several times with WWE and independently with a couple of my own one-man type shows, and have always enjoyed it. And I don't know, there's something special about Ireland to me. I've had the luxury, if you will, of being able to travel all over the world and visit many different countries, but for some reason, Ireland is one of those places that I immediately I felt at home for some reason, and I can't wait to get back.
We're looking forward to that. Now, Eric, speaking of your passion and love for wrestling, how did it all come about first day? How did it? Because you've had so many key roles when it comes to WCW, WWE, but how did it come about first day?
My first day in the wrestling industry, you mean?
Yeah.
It was an amazing time. I was a young man. It was 1987, so I was only, I think, 32 years old at the time. I never aspired to be in the professional wrestling business, although I was a big fan. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and from an early age, probably 6 or 8 years old, I was always a fan of professional wrestling. Throughout my early adolescent years, my teenage years, and into early adulthood, I always believed that wrestling was the purest form of marketing and entertainment there was. And coincidentally, and it really was a coincidence, I had a meeting with a gentleman by the name of Vern Gagne, who owned a territory at the time. This is when territories still existed in the United States. And he owned a wrestling promotion or territory in the Minneapolis area. And I went to have a meeting with him about a separate business discussion. And long story short, we hit it off very well, and about 3 weeks later, I was working for him in a sales and marketing capacity. And that was my first entrance, if you will, into the world of professional wrestling. And because of my interest and the opportunity being as unique as it was, I had an opportunity to get exposed to the various levels of the industry, whether it be sales and marketing initially, and then eventually production, and then live production, live event promotion, and eventually ended up in an on-camera role, and the rest is kind of history.
And when it comes to wrestling, obviously being a wrestling fan, I always think of WCW, the iconic days. You were right in the middle of all that. Obviously, we've seen some fantastic bookings, some beautiful producing. But what was it like to be around the likes of Hulk Hogan? Even Dennis Rodman, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, you made some iconic moments for us wrestling fans. What was it like to be in the middle of all that?
It was an amazing experience, an invaluable experience, and one that I'm very grateful for. And there were certainly ups and downs. It wasn't all fun and games and excitement and positive things. It was very, very challenging. The entertainment business in general, whether it's movies or television or music or plays or any form of entertainment, is a very competitive, constantly evolving industry. And so there were challenges, but at that time, at that stage of my life, I really enjoyed those types of challenges, and still do to a large degree. But being, so many of the experiences that I had, small ones, big ones, successful ones, not so successful ones, were all kind of first time experiences for me. So it was like being on an amazing journey where every day brought a new opportunity and a new challenge and a new set of circumstances that had to be navigated. And I'll forever be grateful.
Definitely. No, I don't normally bring up key figures when it comes to the industry, but obviously Dennis Rodman's been spoke about a lot recently. How did you find Dennis? Obviously, it was great to get him into WCW. Obviously, at the peak of his career. Did you find working with him difficult, or was it okay in the end? Or
Dennis Rodman is a very controversial character and personality, individual. Always has been for the larger part of his career in the NBA. I found Dennis to be a pleasure to work with. He had his own baggage. There were certain peculiarities about Dennis that made it challenging in some respects. But Dennis had, believe it or not, a great commitment, and he loved the business. He loved being in WCW. He loved working in the ring. He loved working with Hulk Hogan and Diamond Dallas Page and Kevin Nash, and it was a very, very positive experience for me. And Dennis is now a good friend of mine. I don't see Dennis often. We both live on different parts of the country, and we don't cross paths often. But when we do, Dennis is one of the people that I've worked with in the past that I always enjoy spending time with. And he's a very complicated character, too, a person, I should say. The persona that we all know as Dennis Rodman, the flamboyant, controversial, outspoken, kind of off-the-wall personality, that's a part of Dennis, but it's not all of Dennis. Dennis is a very intelligent individual. He's a very warm and generous individual, almost to a fault. Not almost, to a fault, generous. And he has a much more sophisticated view of the world than I think many people give him credit for. So I love working with Dennis. I enjoy hanging out with Dennis and consider him a friend.
Appreciate that. Now, Eric, we have to speak about, obviously, towards the end of WCW, you wanted to obviously, buy WCW with a firm. I can only help and think all these years later how awesome that would have been. You obviously have big plans for WCW. I know there was an issue with the network. I think it was Ted Turner's network. The TV kind of deal fell through and stuff. But do you believe if you took over WCW back in 2001 that it would still be here to this day?
That's a hypothetical question, and it's one that there's no good answer to. I would like to believe that it would still be here to this day, but here's the truth. The group of people that I have found, the investment group that I found to partner with and to acquire WCW was a venture capitalist firm. They specialized in buying companies that were in one way, shape, or form underwater and were underperforming, but yet had great potential. And their specialty was acquiring those companies, righting the ship, so to speak, if you understand what I mean by that, and then turning that around and selling it to a larger a company. So as much as I like to think that investment group would have acquired WCW and built the organization in order to hold on to it in the long term, the truth is it was a transactional type of opportunity for them, meaning they were going to buy it at one price, fix the things that needed to be fixed, and most likely sell it at a higher price sometime in the future. And knowing now that was the case then, in all likelihood, I doubt that WCW would have been able to sustain any kind of longevity simply because it was just a part of a larger transactional business plan.
I understand. I appreciate the honesty as well on that one. What kind of projects do you have in the coming months, Eric? Obviously, you're always busy, you're always active, you've got a good drive in life. Any projects that you can tell us about in the coming months? Will we see you back on the screens, maybe, or?
Never say never in any form of entertainment business. There's always that opportunity, and it could happen in terms of me being back on camera. I highly doubt it. It would take a very unique opportunity for it to make any sense, both for myself and for any potential partner that would possibly be interested in that role for me. So I think that that's a real long shot at this stage of my career. But again, you never know. In terms of projects, obviously I'm very busy with the podcast, 83 Weeks with Conrad Thompson, and thoroughly enjoy that opportunity. It's one that's growing every week. We seem to be getting more and more successful and growing a larger and larger audience, thanks to people like you and your fans in Ireland and all over the world, really. I am involved still in developing television projects for other people, not as active as I was several years ago, but there are projects that come my way every once in a while that I take particular interest in for whatever reason and jump in. And I have one in particular that I'm developing now. I'm involved in a movie project for Netflix, which I'm very excited about. That's kind of a long-term project that I've been working on for some time, but we're making great progress and hope to be able to talk about it in more detail in the future. But that's keeping me pretty occupied as well. So I'm staying active in media and entertainment, but I'm a little bit more selective in terms of what I do now than I used to be.
I completely understand. Now, Matt's a big fan. Matt's in Dublin. He wants to know, Eric, how good were you when it comes to kickboxing? Because you were a bit of a dark horse back in the day. Were you a good kickboxer?
Well, good is a subjective term, and a relative term at that. There was a point, I think, in the late 70s and the early 80s when probably I was in my prime, so to speak, as a martial artist, when I would say I was far better than average, but certainly not one of the best. But I enjoyed it. I competed in martial arts just because I had a passion for it. Winning and losing and building a career out of it was interesting to me, but it wasn't my primary goal. I've always loved physical contact. I was an amateur wrestler in high school and in college. I wrestled after high school. I was an amateur wrestler and wrestled in what they call the Amateur Athletic Union here in the United States. And I wrestled freestyle wrestling as well as Greco-Roman wrestling. And again, I was average as an amateur wrestler, but loved it. And I did it out of my passion for it more than because I was particularly excellent at it. And once I transitioned out of amateur wrestling in my mid-20s, I transitioned into martial arts, and probably for a lot of the same reasons. I've just always loved competitive physical contact, and martial arts was a great outlet for me.
Awesome. Now, Jason just wants to say thank you for so many iconic moments in his teens and his adulthood. He said you've produced some of the greatest teens when it comes to wrestling. So he just wanted to say thank you. And last of all, Amy said you've encountered so many, you've worked with so many wrestlers and so many amazing people all these years. Would you regard any wrestlers, as really, really close friends to you?
Well, Hulk Hogan to this day is one of my best friends, and we've maintained that relationship for the last, what is it now, 25 years or more, 26 years. So, Hulk Hogan, probably my best friend. Bruce Pritchard, who is currently the executive director of SmackDown for WWE, is another very, very close friend. Who I've worked with in WWE when I first got there as a talent back in the early 2000s. Diamond Dallas Page is a very close friend of mine who I still stay in close contact with. And there are many others that I regard as Booker T is a good friend of mine. Ernest the Cat Miller, another good friend of mine. Sonny Ono is a very, very close friend who I knew long before I got into professional wrestling. Sonny Ono and I first became friends back when we were both competing in martial arts. So Sonny and I have been friends since probably 1977. So it's been a minute since we've been friends. So I've maintained plenty of relationships that I've built throughout the years in my wrestling career. But I would say of all of them, Hulk Hogan and I are probably the closest.
That's a good one to have. Listen, Eric, we really appreciate you speaking to us today. We know it's a tough time in this world, but as always, we're going to follow the podcast. We're always going to share the links to the podcast. You're an awesome guy. We met you in New York last year for the first time. We were thrilled. You're an absolute gentleman, and thank you for some of the greatest moments in wrestling history over the years. We really appreciate it.
Well, Jerry, anytime you want to catch up and do another podcast, let me know. I'm happy to do it with you. You're a great guy, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have a direct conversation with fans in Ireland. And I can't wait to get back. Hopefully it'll be sooner than later, but whenever it happens, I look forward to having a pint with you.
Eric, we owe you a couple of points, and it means a lot. So stay safe, look after yourself, and tell the family you were asking for them, and we'll catch you very soon, my friend. Thank you.
All right. You stay safe and be well.